So I was just told that you could not hear me. So I'm 2 minutes into the show. I apologize. It was a simple welcome. Let me just go over. I was welcoming everyone. Good morning to Wait One Legal Minute. Alaina, I'm hearing some feedback on your end on my computer. Can everyone hear me okay? Let me know. I was asking, are you drained? How are you, Black people? Are you exhausted? Are you fed up over the state of Black people in America? I want to hear from you. Do you have something to say? Do you have something to share about where our society is, where we've been, and the secrets that we continue to sweep under the rug? I want to hear from you. How are you, Black people? How are you, brown people? How are you, white people who are joining the fight in humanity? This is a fight for humanity, the fight for common decency. That's what we're fighting for. How are you? I want to know. I want to hear from you. On Tuesday, in honor of the death of George Floyd and many others, by the way, we posted a blackout. We had a show scheduled for Miss Alaina Pinkney. We rescheduled, we coordinated with Alaina, and we decided that it was best to honor George Floyd's death and the request of Blackout Tuesday to not have our scheduled show. And we did that. Many other stores supported in this demonstration, sent emails in support of police injustice, and it was overwhelming to see how many stores and organizations, corporations heard our cries and support us in this fight for humanity. We thank you. But we rescheduled Alaina. She's with me. I'm going to bring her on now. Alaina, here's your countdown. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Okay, we can't hear you.
Oh, how do we? Your mic is muted. Are you speaking?
We cannot hear you, Alaina.
It says ask host to unmute you. Can you put it in the thing?
Let's try to bring you back in. Okay, she's going to text me. Okay, you are not muted on my end. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
But you are still muted. Alaina, you are not muted on my end, so I'm going to ask you, can you come off and come back on?
Mic is muted. Hold on.
I cannot hear you. I don't think.
Can you hear me now?
You're not muted on my end. I want everyone to know we had a test run, by the way. We are just having a little technical difficulties here. Let me hide you and have you come back in. Now, there you are. Can you hear me? Alaina, come back off, go out, and come back in. You're not muted on my end, okay? We're going to have Alaina come back in a moment. I'm going to keep on. I do apologize about this. I really am interested in Alaina sharing her story. Thank you for letting me know you can hear me. Ephraim, good morning. Alaina is going to come back in and says she's ready to join. Okay. Can you hear? Can I hear you?
Can you hear me?
Check your mute.
It's not muted. All of the little bubbles going up, so it's saying that I'm on.
Okay, we can hear you.
Okay, you can hear me now?
Okay. I'm so sorry for these technical difficulties. Alaina, how are you this morning?
I'm good. And you know what? Technical difficulties happen. I think the most important thing is the message, not necessarily the technical issue. So
the production. We're not going for a professional production today. We're going for a message, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. So, Alaina, I kind of gave an introduction. Thank you, Carrie Hunter, for letting us know you can hear us. Alaina, I found you because after my show last Thursday, I was listening to the radio station and you shared a story that was so compelling to me. I had to find you. I had my staff find you on Instagram. I reached out and we coordinated you coming onto the show to share your story and just have a discussion. So tell me we're going to just jump right into it. What was your encounter with Officer Chauvin?
Well, to kind of discuss my encounter, I want to give a little backstory and context to people who are not from Minneapolis that may not necessarily understand the flow and the systematic racism that occurs in Minneapolis. So to start off, I will say that Minneapolis well, the state of Minnesota has 10,000 lakes, but within itself, Minneapolis has a cluster of lakes that are all connected via something called the Minnehaha Creek. So the further north lake that you go to, the more probably racially diverse that lake is. The further south you go to, the more Caucasian the lake is. And where I grew up was south. I grew up right near the Minnehaha Creek. So we utilized Lake Nokomis, which is where the incident happened. And that lake is predominantly Caucasian. If you go there on any given day where it's high traffic, there's probably one black family per 10 families there. So just to give you some understanding about where I was at.
You froze, Alaina. Now that is an internet issue, I believe. Are you there, Alaina? Alaina was just giving us some context. We have lost her, but she was giving us context about the divide in Minneapolis by the lake, north being more diverse, south being predominantly white, which is where the incident occurred. And from my previous conversation and our test run with Alaina, I am aware that that is where she was born and raised. So Alaina was born and raised very closely to the area. And when I say very close, within blocks, I recall from our conversation, and I'm texting her to come back on. She grew up within blocks of where the incident occurred. And from my conversation with her, and she's coming back on shortly. There you are. We lost you for a second.
I tell you what, somebody don't want this story told, but I'm gonna tell it anyway, no matter how many times it takes us to tell it. We ain't got time for all that. So basically, yes. So we were at the lake on Memorial Day, and we were, barbecuing just like any other family that was at the lake. Same thing everybody does on a holiday. And my nephew is severely autistic, and he was playing by the lakeside with his cousins, and he saw a boat that had some fishing rods on the boat. Now, it's to be noted that one of the things that he does with his dad consistently is go fishing. So in the mind of a person a child who's about 9, 10 years old, oh, fishing rods. Well, let me see if I can use those fishing rods to go fishing. So he did reach in the boat to try to take the fishing rods. Was it right? Absolutely not. But he's 9. He doesn't know. So the owners of the boat told him, hey, those aren't your rods. Leave them alone. So he put them down. However, instead of talking to a child and doing what we did in our day, which is a community raising children, right? They called the police on him because apparently a 9-year-old who has severe autism is a threat. Who came to pick him up and cuffed him and put him in the back of the police car is Derek Chauvin. It actually was 2 squad cars for a 9-year-old boy. Let's point that out. 2 squad cars for a 9-year-old boy. And they drove them over to where we were barbecuing. I was with my mother, my sister, my brother-in-law, and a bunch of other adults while all the kids were off playing. And Derek Chauvin walks up, with his, little posse of 3 other cops. And he was
placed in the police car and driven to where you were.
Oh, absolutely. And they were not even that far away. But he drove a 9-year-old severely autistic boy and put him in handcuffs in the back seat of the police car and drove him over to where we were. And the first thing that man says when he gets out of the police vehicle and walks over to my sister, he says, "Whose is this?" And he points at the back of the car where my nephew is crying his eyes out. And my sister said, that's my son. What's going on? What did he do? And he said, well, there's a family that accused him of stealing some fishing rods. And I walk up and the first thing I'm thinking is like, why do you have him in the back of a police car? Does he still have the rods? Obviously not, right? So he didn't steal them because he doesn't have them anymore. Okay. So that, you use your mind and you think about these things. And I said, so why is he in the back seat of the police car? Did they press charges? And he looked at me and he said, I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to her. And I said, well, you know what? It's not right that you have
her being your sister,
being my sister. Absolutely. And I said, it's not right that you have this child in the backseat of a police car. Are you looking at him? Like, and I just, I kind of moved my sister out the way because I know my sister, it would have been a whole nother situation if my sister had been talking and had been more vocal, because my sister she don't got time. Okay. So she didn't have time, but it was more of a shock because you're looking at your son. You're looking at your baby that you are trying to protect as an African-American mother in the backseat of a police car, treated like a criminal, when this family never even pressed charges, when there was another way that this could have been handled. And Derek Chauvin, I say to that man, I said, did the family press charges? Why is are they going to, do something further than just have called you? And he says, well, no. I said, well, why is he in the backseat of the police car? Derek Chauvin, well, I'm going to teach him a lesson. What do you mean teach him a lesson? Is that what you do? That's not policing. That's not right. And so I say to him, you need to let him out of the backseat of the police car if nobody's going to do anything. And he says straight up, I'm going to let him out when I choose to let him out. And it just, in that moment, I'm just looking at this like, this is insane. My mother is behind me and she's crying. And I said, and we're looking at my nephew in the window of this police car, and the whole entire time he is crying his eyes out. I look to the other officers that are there, and it's to be noted that it was just like the video that you saw of George Floyd being murdered. You have 3 other people who are compliant with this alpha that is making decisions for an entire team, even decisions that aren't right. And so I say to the other police officers, are you going to let him do this? Are you going to let him do this to a child? You can let him out of that car. There's no reason to handle the situation that way. And so one of the other officers who was there didn't let him out of the car, but he did open the door of the police vehicle, and he let my mother go over to the vehicle and stand next to her grandson. And all this time while we're having this exchange with Derek Chauvin, I hear my nephew saying, Grandma, please, I didn't do anything, Grandma. I'm so sorry, Grandma. I won't do it again, Grandma. Please, Grandma, let me out, Grandma. Please, Grandma. And I'm like, it's breaking my heart to hear this. And while this is happening, this man is going through a series of questions that continuously is the backdrop for what we're dealing with this systematic racism. Why are you guys at this park as opposed to being at one of the lakes that's further north? Like, do you come here often? Do you belong in this neighborhood? As if to say that we have to wake up as African Americans and make a decision to go somewhere that's comfortable for them, not where we choose to go and spend our holiday. And that's what's happening. And I'm telling him, like, this is not right. You don't have the right to ask me where I belong, where I should be. And I told him straight up, I said, I'm reporting you to the Minneapolis Police Department for racism and discrimination. And I said, I want your name and I want your badge number. And so he said,
you asked for his badge number, name, and he responded to you, I think, in a manner that we need to discuss. We need to talk about the way he addressed you when you asked him for his badge number. What happened?
Well, first of all, he laughed at me. And then he said to me, you want my name? It's right here. Come a little closer. Now, hindsight is 2020. I would have went close. I could have been George Floyd. You understand? I told that man straight up. I said, I'm not going anywhere near you. I'm not crazy. I already see the situation in my mind because I'm one of them predictive thinkers that already know what could have come down the line if I had went close enough to this man to get this badge number. He would have said anything. And all these 3 officers who are compliant with this man would have said that I tried to do something. I had the wherewithal, thank you, Jesus, to not go into that man's space. I said, I'm not going anywhere near you. I said, I want a business card. You got something. So he says, oh, okay. So he reaches in his pocket and he pulls out his card and he says, you want to know my name? And he throws the card in there. He says, here you go. Go fetch it. Like I'm a dog on the street.
Right.
When I tell you, sister, in that moment, and even when I think about it to this day, I was seething. I was angry. That was embarrassing. And it's to be understood that while this is happening, we have all these other people that are surrounding us, watching from afar, passing judgment on us as African-American people. All we're doing is barbecuing just like everybody else. We got all these eyes and all these people around us that are continuously buying into a hate system that was created to keep us down. And so I just told him, I pulled out my phone in that moment and I said, I will never in the history of my life forget the way you made me feel and what you have done here today. And I said, I'm taking your picture because I will never forget your face. And I pulled out my phone and I took a picture of this man. And when I saw that video of George Floyd being murdered on Facebook.
What did that invoke in you?
Honestly,
I can't imagine.
Man, I'm not going to cry because I've already.
No, I'm trying not to as I listen to you. But tell me the first thought you had when you saw his picture and his name and what he was doing. What was the first feeling you had?
The first feeling I had is, why is this continuously happening? And why do I know that face? I have a photographic memory. If I've had any kind of encounter with you as an individual, I remember your face. It may take me a little while, but I always believe in omens. And I always believe in things. Now, 2 months ago, my mother, who also lived in Minneapolis, I moved her here from Minneapolis to Atlanta. And while we were packing up her house, she said, Alaina, here is a bag of your old cell phones. I don't know what you want to do with them, but I'm going to give them to you anyway. 2 weeks before the incident occurred with George Floyd, I just started plugging phones in just to plug them in to see if any of them worked, because I was like, it's time to start throwing this stuff away. And when I went through my purple Lotus phone, I saw the picture of Derek Chauvin in there. Thought nothing of it, but I was like, that's that day that punk police officer tried to intimidate us and treat us like trash at the lake. I said, wow, I can't believe that I still have this picture. Then when I saw that video, I sent the video to my mom. I said, where do we know this guy from? And that was when I had the mindset to go back and pull that phone out. And I was like, it almost took me out. I was like, oh my God. And then when I made that public post on my Facebook page, just letting people know, like, it's one thing when you see something like that happen, it takes you down. It hurts us. You know, we cannot continue to watch murder porn and on live TV or on Facebook or any social media platform and not be affected. But it's another thing when it's someone that you have been inches from, and it could have been you. And that's how I felt in my mind. That could have been that could have been my nephew. That could have been any of us in that moment with this man that has 18 priors. And no one has done a thing to get this man out of a position of policing power. And no one in his crew said anything. Now you got 3 other guys that have been charged now formally with accessory to murder, all because they wouldn't speak up. Now we did go down to the 3rd precinct, the one that down.
Let me just correct you. They were charged with aiding and abetting.
Okay.
With aiding and abetting, and Officer Chauvin's Chauvin. We're not going to focus too much on how we pronounce his name. His charge was increased from 3rd-degree murder, which only had a maximum penalty of 25 years, to 2nd-degree murder, which is maximum sentence is now 40 years. So that is a good thing.
It's a good thing, but they're just trying to satisfy the world right now. They should have brought that man in a long time ago. Honestly, if plenty of other leaders had done their job, that man would have never been able to kill George Floyd. Period. Bottom line. This man has gotten off for a multitude of things that should have taken him down, and it's just not right. Like when I was saying, when we went to go file our police report on this man, we went to the 3rd precinct to file it. When we got there, there was a desk clerk there, and she said that we had to our police report had to be taken by a chief of police. So she says, I'll be right back. He's in the back. I'm going to go get him. She goes and she's back there for 8 to 10 minutes.
You're freezing. I'm sorry. You spoke to the receptionist. She said the police report had to be taken by the chief of police. And then what happened? You were freezing.
Okay. And then she goes into the back. She's gone like 8 or 10 minutes. And my mother just looks to me, and my mother is almost 70 years old. She's been around. She knows what this is. She's been through the civil rights movement. She says, what's taking her so long? And I said, I have no idea. My mom said, I already know what's taking her so long. She wants us to leave. She expects us to leave. She expects us to walk out the door. But she said, but we're not going to do that today. And so when the woman comes back, there's no chief of police with her. She simply says, I'm sorry, but there's no one back there to take your story right now. I'm going to have you write it down on our formal report, and then we'll have somebody contact you later. My mother looks at her, being the militant, strong Black mother she is, and she says, if there was nobody back there, what took you so long? The woman ignored us completely. She said, just, technicalities. Here's a piece of paper, fill it out. We filled out that piece of paper. No one ever contacted us. I actually was a mail carrier at the time, and I delivered mail on Lake Street in that area. And one day on my lunch break, I went up there to inquire about any follow-up on the situation. When I got there, the desk clerk who was on duty at the time simply said, I'm sorry, but I don't see your report in our files. So basically, she threw our piece of paper away. They did nothing. So when you hear that this man has 18 prior police reports, how many does he really have? It could be double. We don't know.
You again, Alaina. Often you froze for a while. Your internet is freezing a little bit. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
So can you repeat the last part of what you were saying?
Where did I leave off at before it froze? You
said that your mother said, she's 70 years old. Your mother said, how did it take you that long if no one was in fact there?
Okay, and so the lady told us, just write it down, and I will we'll have somebody follow up with you later. So we wrote out all of our bullet points of what happened that day at the lake. Days later, no one ever contacted us. No one did anything. So one day, at the time, I was delivering mail for the United States Post Office, and I was delivering mail in that particular neighborhood. So what I did was I went down on my lunch break to go to that police precinct to find out if there was any follow-up. And to make a long story short, the desk sergeant who was on the desk at the time basically had no recollection or any filings of our report, meaning they threw it away. So when they tell you that this man has 18 priors, that's not true. It's probably more than that. It could be double. It could be triple. We have no idea. But you have
recorded. That's what they have in a file.
Yeah. Right. You have a system of police not only turning their back like Tu Tao did in the video, but you also have a system of police that are wiping away records, that are completely turning a blind eye and not even filing reports because it's in their interest to protect their interest, not to protect the people. So that's the situation that we're in right here. You also have a system of a police that are coming from cities completely out of the map of Minneapolis. They don't even live in Minneapolis, that are coming from all these other areas that are known to be populated and dominated by Caucasian individuals. But you have them coming into a diverse city that has the largest Somalian community outside of Somalia. We have a large Hmong population. We have a large Hispanic population. Like, I know that everybody thinks Minneapolis is super white. It's absolutely not. It's a beautiful city of diverse faces and races, but you don't see that. And you got people coming in that do not identify or care about the people that they're supposed to be protecting. And then you wonder why situations with George Floyd happen. They happen because you have a tone-deaf group of people that are supposed to be policing people, but they don't care about those people because those people don't look or have anything to do with them. Am I still live? Do you see me?
Oh.
Hello?
You're still live, but there's a delay, babe.
Looks like she disappeared. Can't see anybody.
You're still live. Your face is still up on there.
I know, but I'm gonna text her.
You're actually live right now.
Is she still on there? Oh, okay. You disappeared.
Can you hear me?
No, you disappeared. You disappeared this time.
I took myself off the screen and let you have it.
Oh, sorry, sister, because I'm like, I'm just saying, like, it has to be we have to really get to the bottom of what is going on in this city. And it's not even just this city, it's cities all over the world. We have to get to the bottom of that. We have to understand we can't continuously speak upon focus on the looting. We're always focusing on the aftermath of a situation, but never on the actual cancer that caused the situation. And I have been making posts and speaking out very vocally because I'm like, I don't think you people understand. Like, and when I say you people, I mean people who are choosing to find things like going to buy a latte and wanting to plan their next vacation more important than a revolution that is happening in this world. We have to really be clear and be focused on trying to get rid of the situation that's happening so it never happens again.
Right. And so that we fix that, then we don't have to respond and react the way that we're doing. We are responding to an issue, to a problem that continues to be unaddressed, unresolved, not acknowledged. And then when we respond, then they want to talk about the response.
Absolutely.
There's something inherently wrong with that mindset. So we got to change the mindset. Now, I want to talk to you about solutions, but before I do that, I got to go here. Our mayor came out after Friday and she made an announcement. She asked everyone to go home. All right. What are your thoughts on Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms recommending or calling for people to go home on Friday?
I think she did the right thing in a sense of where her heart was is in a good place, right? We don't need the looting and the rioting. We understand why it happens. You have a group of individuals people, period, that have been coming out of a pandemic where their paychecks have been stopped, where they haven't been able to acquire. You have an economic system that is completely broken. That's the beginning of the problem of looting. So now if I have an opportunity to go get something, why wouldn't I go get it? So you can't be mad, but I know, understand Keisha is trying to protect the community because unlike any other city in the United States, this is black. We
built our city.
We built this city. You know what I mean? So it's like, come on, y'all. Don't tear up your own. I get where she was coming from. I get exactly where she was coming from. It's trying to weed out those that are trying to acquire during a time of unrest versus those who are trying to speak out on it. But unfortunately, rage comes in many different forms, and you can't control a tornado.
You can't control it. And so my thought is, let's talk about the solution, because I think that we as Black people, we as people can be so effective when we consolidate, when we unify, when we organize, right? When we have a structured message and a plan, then we have power.
Absolutely.
We feel powerless in America, right? Every day we walk around, like you said, when you had the encounter with Officer Chauvin, you felt powerless. That is how we feel as Black Americans. But together, we have power. Our dollars have power. Tuesday, I think, in my opinion, was effective. That was I felt like corporations supported us because we were in a unified effort, made a small little difference, right? So my question is, what's next? What do you think we should do? How do you think we should unify and consolidate our voices to make one impact, powerful impact?
Well, first of all, we need to identify our modern day Martin. We don't have one. So what you have right now is a bunch of people that are thinking for themselves and not thinking in a hive mindset. You bees are only able to continue to make honey, sweet honey, if they have a queen bee, right? We don't have that right now. There are people who are slowly identifying themselves as the Martins of tomorrow or the Malcolms of tomorrow, but we need to have somebody that we can get behind that will unify us, because it sure ain't the president. So it starts there. Leadership is key to being organized. Without leadership, everybody's going to do what serves themselves, not necessarily what serves the people. Need to be able
You're here. Listen, I don't know what is going on with my internet, but I was shut completely down. I'm going to pull you back in. It's counting you in. Anyone who is joining us, I apologize. This has never happened. I don't like to call myself a conspiracy theorist, but this was planned to go on Tuesday. We
Yep.
sent out so many social media posts letting people know that Alaina was going to join us to share her story. My internet has never gone completely out. And my internet went completely down. No service on any of my devices. So I apologize for that. Alaina, we were talking about, and I appreciate everyone. We have several comments um, here. And by the way, that was my staff saying that we were working out the technical issues because I couldn't even type on the comments. But here's a comment from another attorney, Regina Matthews. We have to know who our local leadership is and arm ourselves with the power to hold these elected officials accountable for the oversight when policing goes wrong. Do you think, Alaina, what is your opinion about the current leadership that we have, let's just say, in Atlanta, and our community voting and getting involved and speaking up and having a voice when it comes to politics?
Well, I think we have great leaders, but I think we need them to be more active in their leadership. I think there needs to be more community involvement, more community programs that let the young people come in and be able to work within, work underneath someone who can kind of lead them in the right direction. I had made a post a couple days ago kind of illustrating why there's a difference between how our generation may have protested versus how this generation is protesting. And the difference is that I was raised on the Cosby Show and Blossom and Saved by the Bell. And my parents were raised on Andy Griffin and Leave It to Beaver. But this new generation of kids were raised on The Purge, and they were raised on Game of Thrones, where they cheered when Khaleesi burned down King's Landing. So you have to understand that if without proper leadership, we're allowing our television to lead our children, and we're allowing our television and the programs that other filmmakers, such as myself, as you can see, my films are in the background, but we're allowing the television to help them make decisions about how they want to respond to situations of police brutality and etc. And so they can't, we cannot do anything yet until others do what they're supposed to do to end police brutality. But we do have to get in front of our youth and in front of anyone. Leadership starts at home. So our parents first have to lead us in the right direction, so that then we can go out and find those other community leaders that lead us additionally in another direction. So it starts there. I think Keisha is great. I wish she would do press conferences every day. Maybe she did, and I don't know. But we need more people going live, like Killer Mike going live every day on his Facebook or his Instagram. We need T.I. going live every day on our Facebook and Instagram. We need people of influence to be more vocal, so that those who follow those influential people who are influential to them can sway the conversation in a different direction and can sway actions in a different direction. It really does take that. And that's the reason why I started speaking up about my experience with Derek Chauvin. I never honestly wanted to. The first outlet that asked me if I would do an interview, I said no, because in my mind, I don't want my story to take away from what happened. I really don't. But I realized that there are so many people that are so naive to what happens within Minneapolis and what happens within the police brutality, the systematic racism, that I realized I had to speak up. So me speaking up is me trying to be a leader as well. So it starts with self.
And I am glad that you changed that mindset, because what people need to understand is this didn't just happen. You know, this comes from a history and a pattern of behavior. Like you said earlier, systematic racism, okay? And it's not just, and just to note, those officers, they were not all white men. The other three that were charged were not all white men, but that does not negate systematic racism, okay? And so we as a people and we as Americans have to understand that. I think that just has to be a level of education and training to understand what has happened, like what has happened here in America to create this racism and what it is, and call it what it is and understand what it is, so that we can have the proper training to change the mindsets. The fact that you had the same experience, I read the complaint against Officer Chauvin. And in the complaint, it said the defendant and the two other officers stayed in their positions. That's the way it was written, right? And that was chilling to me because I read this after having the initial conversation with you. That is compelling because as police officers, people who are supposed to serve and protect us, stand by and are complicit in the bad actions of police officers, we continue to be powerless. We continue to feel unprotected when our own police officers won't come to our defense and won't stand on the side of right. And I think that's why these officers are being charged and should be charged, but it needs to happen more consistently.
Absolutely. And it shouldn't take 8 months of an investigation of something we saw on video with our own eyes to figure out if we should bring these people in and charge them. Like, that's the normal policy, is that they have to take all this time to figure out that something that the entire world saw with their own eyes. I hate to say this, but if they would not have burned Minneapolis down, they would still be out. They would not have been charged. They'd be doing an 8 to 10 month long exhausting investigation before they brought these bad cops in. It would have never happened. And it's unfortunate, but people need to really understand that. And you know that is true because in the past, we're still marching for others who still haven't gotten justice. That's just the way it is. And it's not going to change until everyone, I'm talking about white parents, black parents, Hispanic parents, Asian parents, have the hard conversation about racism with their child. And it's like I've been trying to, I'm thinking about doing a little small documentary about every black person's story of the first time they realize they're black. Because it's unfortunate. You realize you're black when someone makes you realize you're black. And because, we wake up realizing we're human, right? But we don't have that really in tune moment to say, oh, wow, I am different. And I know the moment I realized I was black was when I was in 7th grade and my mother sent me to this school called Annunciation. And there was maybe 8 black students in the entire school, probably maybe 600 kids, 8 black kids. And I remember there was this boy and he kept calling me Monkey Lady. And I answered to it because I didn't know. And I remember I went home and I talked to my mom and I was like, yeah, this boy at school gave me this nickname. It was weeks. This boy at school gave me this nickname. He was calling me Monkey Lady and Monkey Girl. And my mom said, what? She couldn't fathom that was happening to me. And then she had to sit down and have the "you're black" conversation. You know what I mean? Like, I need to let you know that is a horrific racial slur to identify you as a monkey. But I had never had that conversation because it wasn't in the books that we learned history, and they don't talk about that in Minneapolis. Them history books are so whitewashed, it's ridiculous. They don't want you to know the truth about what happened to us. Everything is packaged up so nicely. And so it's important for us to have those hard conversations. And I question 20 years from now what's going to be in the history books for our children of tomorrow about what happened during this time.
Right. How the narrative will go, if this will all be erased.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it can't be. And we have to make sure that doesn't happen. People like you in your industry, in film, writers, the TV analysts, the commentators, we all have to make sure that the history is preserved, the things that happened before us and the things that are happening now. Right. It has to be preserved so that our children's children can understand our plight. It's a continued plight. Things are no better. When Trump got into office, my thought was, I was surprised. I really couldn't believe it. We have reached some lows in my lifetime. I'm 48. We've reached some lows, right? But I just felt like that was the lowest of the low during my lifetime. And then because I quickly look for the silver lining, and things started happening. And I thought, here's the silver lining in this. What people didn't want to acknowledge exists, they'll have to now. He's going to make every racist person feel comfort in them being racist and being verbal, and it will now be overt. And I want to know who you are.
Oh,
I
absolutely.
don't want you just talking about my son at your dinner table with your children and calling us names. I want to know who you are, show your face, and it's happening. So that was the silver lining for me, but it's actually now really coming. I mean, it's becoming glaringly clear that it's not just a few pockets. Like it's a lot of people who don't see anything wrong with what happened to George Floyd. Who are
something more wrong with what happened after George Floyd.
Right. That's where the focus, and that's where we have to be careful as Black Americans. We can't. I'm torn on how I feel about the riot because one, I don't think that necessarily the protesters who truly came to peacefully protest initiated the riots. I think that there were some infiltrators who exacerbated the situation and took advantage of the efforts, right, and the masses of people. But two, I feel like what you said earlier, had it not risen to the level it rose to, it may not have drawn the attention that it did. Our cries may not have been heard for as far as they did. So
absolutely.
I'm really torn, but I do believe that we are most effective in solidarity and organized.
Yes, I agree.
What's your next step? I mean, because I constantly think about that for myself. What's next?
My next step, as you know, I run a branding company and I actually teach women how to build six-figure brands. My next step is to bring back Black Wall Street, point blank, period. If we're going to talk about being able to have strength and power, that starts with creating things that are for us, by us, and not continuously allowing ourselves to have to be reliant upon other people's economic decision for us. Like if we sit back and figure out, how can I put a Black grocery store in my community? How can I put a Black restaurant in my community? How can I do that so that we are in charge of our own financial narrative? That's what's going to change when we don't need them anymore. And that's, for me, it's not divisiveness. I'm not against anybody, right? But we do at the end of the day have to create our own pockets of financial wealth, so that, and many of us are. But that's my next step. My next step is to continue to be vocal, to continue to create my artistic pieces, and at the same time continue to build up our Black people and teach them how to make six figures on their own. Because, hey, Corona has affected a lot of people, but it doesn't have to if you have your own.
So let me ask you this. What is the climate in your hometown right now? What is the climate there?
I would say 80% of the people in Minneapolis, Black, white, Asian, Haitian, Hmong, Somali, whatever, are together. And they collectively believe that what happened was wrong. And I would say that the majority is banding together to try to rebuild and to try to change, and to try to have the conversation, the hard conversation that no one ever wanted to have before. So I think that that's, in my opinion, the climate is that it's creating togetherness versus divisiveness. But there is that pocket of people who have infiltrated the movement and the message and are trying to tear Minneapolis down. But I think the majority of the people there are trying to build and change the world for the world around them.
I have a comment here from, and I may mispronounce your name. Sayla is your Facebook name. Every other race does it and they call it good. And we are tired of being served by people who hate us. I mean, it's tough being, having people accountable in government for us that don't understand our plight. How can you advocate for me when you don't know my experience, when you can't relate to my experience? And moreover, you don't try to.
Don't try to. That's key.
It's okay not to know. Hey, listen, we don't know everything. But when you don't make a concerted effort to learn, to educate yourself about the people you serve, then you're not doing your job. You're not being civic. That's not being civic.
But nowadays people's first response to someone who doesn't have the right mindset about a situation is to just unfriend or unfollow them. See, I haven't done any of that, but I've been unfollowed and unfriended by a multitude of people who just didn't agree with me. But for me, I'm going to sit down and we're going to have the conversation, because I think we shouldn't fear the conversation. Anybody who tries to silence voices is not trying to change the world, is not trying to change the narrative. So I've been spending a lot of energy, unfortunately, trying to educate people who are on the outside of the narrative and need to have discernment and understanding about how we feel as a people and why this is happening. They have turned a complete blind eye to whatever privilege that they may have had, and they don't get it and they don't understand. So I have been not, on my keyboard, typing up my dissertations like, look, this is but it is what it is. I think we need to take that time to bridge the gap and have that conversation, and not necessarily click off someone's page or throw them out of your life, but just say, hey, I need you to know how I feel. If you call yourself my friend, then you need to understand how what is happening affects me, and that it's been happening for my entire life. So,
well, I appreciate that, because about a year ago, I unfriended someone who was blatantly, I hate to say racist, but
it is what it is. You can't do nothing about them, though.
Because I don't know. So just because you're a Trump supporter doesn't necessarily mean, but it was the way that some of the messages that he was posting offended me. And it was easier. The easy thing to do is to just unfriend, defriend, I don't know the term, but that's what I did. But I am going to heed your advice. I'm going to do what you do, especially now that I've been led on this forum and in this conversation to stand up in a different way and to voice and express my feelings in a different way. I'm going to handle that a little different. And anybody out there, I have a lot of friends, and we've been having this conversation about what do you do when people show their true colors, if you will.
Yeah, I the reason why I speak out and speak up is because I need them to know that if I see them a year from now in a grocery store that they were upset that got burned down, that I know that you're a racist. See, if I don't say anything that lets them off the hook, they can see me out in the street and be like, oh, hey, Alaina, how you doing? But they're not going to be that comfortable having a conversation with me when they see me, if they know that I know that they're racist. So for me, I speak up. Right. And then if you're still being the same, then I'm gonna unfriend you, or you can unfriend me. But I definitely start first.
You've done your part.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely. Because they need to know I know. They need to know I know. They need all of us to know we know. You can't just keep getting away with that. Doesn't even make any sense anymore in 2020 to hate people because of the color of their skin. That's the most ridiculous thing ever.
And so I've also spoken to a few of my friends who are psychologists and therapists, and trying to put this in perspective, because when I talk to people, sometimes we're just crying. Like, you see something and you just cry. I just saying it is making me cry. And it was put in perspective for me that we are traumatized people.
Of course.
We are traumatized. And that is what people need to know and understand. That what you have done to Black people, it ain't over. You just don't forget about it. We live it, right? It's in our blood. It's in our history. And so we are always overcoming. Like, each day we get up, we know that we're getting up and we're having to overcome. We get up overcoming. That's how we get up. That's how we rise up, overcoming. We are traumatized. And that's what people need to understand about affirmative action, right? You back in the day with a dispute about affirmative. Why do you need to? Because we are traumatized. See, now look at all of these recent events where people, entitled folk, continue to make us feel powerless in our daily activities. And you know, I reread the complaint, and what I did know is all of this shit was over a $20 counterfeit bill. Did you know that?
Of course.
I didn't know that.
Of course.
I heard it was some forgery charges, but when it's $20.
$20. It tells you the mindset of America, why they're so mad.
And so now I think about the store owner who called the police on the black person, and I get it. I don't know if it was what happened with the counterfeit bill, if he produced the counterfeit bill to pay for some items. That's what I'm assuming happened. But you called the police in this day and age over $20?
Over $20 when you've made how much money? I wish I would sue every client that never pays me my final retainer. Do you know how many lawsuits I would have? Sometimes you just brush things under the rug. It's $20. It's $20. Oh, you're frozen. Is it just me am I frozen, or is our sister Melanie frozen? Anybody can type in the comments and tell me if Melanie is frozen for you and I'm not frozen.
You're both not frozen, but
uh-oh, is my internet freezing again? I'm
trying to see if it comes back. I'm looking.
You are still live. You know, every time we get to a certain level, my internet cuts out.
Internet don't want us to be great, but that's all right. We great anyway.
We're great anyway. We're getting through this conversation. It's just taking a while.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
So this store owner who reaps the benefits of being in your community, and I don't know the race of that community owner, but my parents, I don't know if anybody from Baltimore is here listening, but my parents own a little corner store on the corner of Bentlow and Landville, little corner store, right? We count candies for pennies. It was that kind of store. I don't know if that's what kind of store this was. But we ain't calling the police over $20, $50. That's not because we're a part of the community. And that's where it goes back to you saying having businesses where we own them in our communities because we have the perspective.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And then there's mutual respect.
Yeah.
You know, and not that we're not, because we're a black-owned business, that we're not going to get robbed. We did. It happened. We got counterfeit money. It happened. But there's a way that we're going to handle it because it's our community and because we know your mama. We know your mama.
Key. Yes.
Let me take a deep breath there. So I think that this is just so many layers to this. And I am, this show was, this Wait One Legal Minute was not intended to be political or to just focus so heavily on social issues, but I am committed now, and I am being led to focus heavily on what's happening because so much is happening right now. So I feel a duty and a responsibility to bring my voice to this forum. So in closing, some final words from you.
My final words are always going to be the same. We need to get out here and own our own so no one will ever take our life away for a $20 counterfeit bill, period. Create your own your own, change your own narrative. We have to do that within our communities across the United States and the world. It is time. We have sat by long enough and been led by them, but it's time for us to lead ourselves, and we need to own our own to do that. Start your own business, become your own leader, have the conversations that are hard to have within your home, and have the hard conversations that you have with yourself. It's time for us to change the narrative, but that narrative starts with us. That's it. It's my closing words.
And we control it. I want to thank you again for joining me. I apologize, and apparently it's all been on my end. I thought it was your internet or your connection. It was mine. Everyone who joined in our conversation, I apologize for the technical difficulties. It happened, and we still made it through. I would love to have you back I will stay in touch with you.
Please.
Um,
Uh-oh, she's freezing. You're frozen, love. Can't hear you. Uh-oh. Is she frozen? Am I not frozen, or am I frozen?
Yeah, you're still live.
Okay, but am I frozen too?
No.
Just Sister Melanie?
Yes.
Okay, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I think this might be it because I think our sister is frozen. I'm not sure, but I really do appreciate everybody stepping on to hear my story. But I want everybody to turn this to themselves and ask themselves what they can do to help change the narrative of Black people in America. Let's all get out here and serve ourselves and the people and do what we need to do. Thank you so much. Much love. You can follow me at Alaina Pinkney, ALAINA PINKNEY on all social platforms, and sending love. Thank you. Love you.